Carluzzo, do you swear to tell your version of the truth, nothing but your version of the truth, so help you God?
You fucking A, I do.
All right, let's get right into it. How did you become interested in the wrestling business?
Basically, I was a fan as a child. I grew up on the old WWF stuff promoted by Vince McMahon. The TV used to come out of Washington, I think, and then they had to come out of the Philadelphia Arena. I used to go to the Philadelphia Arena in the Hotel Philadelphia a lot, and I was always a big fan of wrestling. And then around 1984, I went Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, Crockett's promotion, came to Philadelphia for the first time, and when they had them expansion wars, and WSP was doing a big promotion with the Crockett's at the time, and I was standing by the stage with a 35mm camera, a real nice camera I picked up. I had my son with me because I'm going to get pictures of him and the wrestlers, and the guy from YSP came out and asked me if I shot professionally, and I lied to him and told him yeah, and he told me they had all this equipment and tractors and trailers, like millions of dollars of audio and video equipment, but no one thought to bring a 35mm camera. And he asked me if I shoot pictures for him. I said yeah, but under one condition. I says from now on, every month when I come back here, I got a full access pass, and he agreed to that. And I met a lot of people through Crockett's promotion, guys that became my best friends, and I done business with for years, like Eddie Gilbert and Jim Cornette, and eventually Terry Funk, and while I was there, I made a good contact prior to that with a company called that done the first 2 wrestling videos ever, Lords of the Ring and the Great American Bash, and a guy named John Kelly who produced them, and his partner was a guy named Jeff Otto, and I got to be real good friends with them. And I really started out doing some stuff with Jerry Lawler first. We had the old Jerry Lawler feud with Bam Bam Bigelow. I met Larry. I knew Larry Sharp for a long time, but I didn't know him personally. And he seen me at the matches and seen me around. We always talked about promoting, so I had an opportunity. They were looking for like a killer heel down there, do something with Jerry Lawler. So I suggested the idea to him about sending Bigelow down there, and he liked it. We got to be good friends after that. And the first show I'd done was with him and his father, and it was at the Armory. It was like one of the Armory is a legendary building in Woodbury for having good shows, and we used to run there pretty regularly.
The opportunity of meeting Larry Sharp,
Opened a lot of doors, yes.
Get into promoting.
Larry Sharp and Berza Kelly.
Okay. How did the Larry Sharp and you form the WWA? What transpired?
Well, we were going to do our first show, and we wanted to do it right, and we wanted to have a belt, and we wanted to have a federation name. So we come up with the name World Wrestling Alliance, and after that, we've done well with it.
What are your fondest memories of working with Larry?
Larry Sharp, I still talk to Larry to this day. We're good friends, even though we parted as far as doing shows together and stuff. Larry, a couple stories about Larry. He's one of the smartest people in the wrestling business. He's a shrewd businessman. He's very smart, and he's blatantly honest. I mean, if he's going to do something to you, he's going to tell you about it. He's not going to go behind your back and do it. And that's the thing I always respected about Larry. And I never had to watch my back around him, because there was times where guys wanted to tune me up and, inflict bodily harm on me. Larry Sharp was right there. And Larry is without a doubt probably, people don't, a lot of people know this, but he's probably one of the baddest motherfuckers I've ever met in wrestling. He's a legitimate badass. We went to the same college together, but he was a few years ahead of me. And I can remember one day at the Monster Factory, when we had in Paulsboro, some idiot come to the door, and he called Larry Sharp out front, and he started saying how wrestling's fake, he's a fucking phony, and blah, 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 and he wanted to fight Larry right there. And Larry took him across the street on the high school grounds, and they took him down and choked him out in about 8 seconds. I mean, Larry's a legitimate badass. Another funny time, I remember he asked me to be a referee at one of his school shows up in Lumberton, and I'm in the ring, there's a match going on, and I'm reffing the match. All of a sudden I stop and I look out in the audience, and there was 2 factions out there. There was this one group of people that were fans of Patty O'Brien, the giant leprechaun, and the other fans were from, they were fans of somebody else. And Patty O'Brien's gang always come to the matches on the bus and had 2 kegs of beer, and they were drunk when they got off the bus. And this fight broke out where the match is going on. So we stopped, I start looking, and 2 guys are wrestling, come over to the side of the ring, we're standing there watching. And Larry Sharp, it reminded me of like Joe Palooka. He was grabbing people and just hitting them one shot and knocking them out. It was so fun. He must have knocked out about 11 people. But he's just a legitimate badass. He was a great guy. I never had to worry about somebody, I never had to worry about my back being watched. He taught me a lot. He's one of the smartest guys in the business, and he's blatantly honest. He's a great guy. I love Larry. He's just he's a good guy, and there's nothing more you can say about him. A lot of people got a problem with him, but I've never had. I mean, he's a shrewd businessman, and he was always, up front with everything. Plus the fact too, he trained some of the greatest wrestlers in the world. I mean, look at the list of wrestlers that he trained. He done. I mean, maybe with the exception of Eddie Sharkey, are pretty much close. He's put more guys in that are stars in professional wrestling than anybody.
What led to your downfall between you and Larry Sharp?
We just had I don't know. We just had it's kind of like a philosophical differences, and I had some problems, and I just wanted to go on my own, and he was fine with that, and he kept the WWA, and we never had a problem where there was ever real heat between us. He was disappointed that we split up, and I was kind of disappointed too, but I just had to do what I wanted to do.
After the split, you became involved in the NWA.
Yes.
Why?
Well, I always wanted to be a member of the NWA, and I finally made contact with a guy named Robert Trowbridge, who was always the attorney. He was Ric Flair's attorney, and he was attorney for the NWA, and I called him up and I said, what do I have to do to be a member? And he knew I used to promote a lot of shows, and he met me in Philadelphia. And I joined, gave him the letter of intent, the money, whatever, and then he sent me the bylaws. And I read the bylaws inside out, and then that was probably the worst thing I did, but it turned into a big mess. But because after that, the whole history with the NWA, how they basically the bulk of the organization left because of the stuff I was trying to do. I pissed them off.
I guess what led up to the bulk of the NWA folding or dissolving is around 92, 93.
Right.
Turner already purchased Crockett, and you guys wanted access to the World Heavyweight Champ.
Right.
Since you were all in the NWA, can you tell us what evolved from the lawsuit?
Well, basically what happened was the bylaws, I read them inside out, and it said that any member has the right, being a member, to have the world champion for a series of matches. So I figured, what the hell, can you imagine if I brought Ric Flair to an independent show, what it would do? Well, I tried doing that, and they just kept giving me grief. They wanted to give me on like Thursday nights 11 o'clock and all this stupid shit, and I just said to hell with it. So I started putting pressure on them legally because I wanted to get Ric Flair, and then that coupled with the fact that they were going to switch the belt to Rick Rude, and the bylaw says the membership, the board of directors and the memberships have some say in that. Well, they were going to switch it without any board of director approval and any membership approval. So we took them to court over that. And that turned out to be a real joke too. So anyway, after all that stuff with the lawsuit and everything, like 12 members decided to leave. It was all a clique of members. It was Sakaguchi and Watts and Crockett and the Murniks and Gary Juster and all guys that were in this clique, and like the 12 of them left. So that only left us with like 3 or 4 members, and the organization was near dead, and I felt responsible that I killed it, like I did with some other towns that I ran. But but I figured I had to do something to build it back up. So we had a meeting in Las Vegas. It was Crockett, Heyman, me, Steve Ricard, and Trowbridge. And I think there was one other person there, I can't remember. And at that time we got ECW to join, and I felt that was a good catalyst for us to get going because they were going to get TV, and they were a good member. And at the time, I was friends with Heyman. I never had a problem with Paul Heyman up to then. I had a problem when he was Paulie Dangerously, not Paul Heyman, who he doing this Paul Dangerously character. But we started getting things going, and then I turned around. I knew Howard Brody for some time, and he expressed interest in joining. He showed a lot of enthusiasm, and then we started building the membership. And the thing that really got it going was I had this brainstorm one time where Candido was the NWA World Champ at the time, and he was getting ready to go to WWF. So I was thinking of someone that we can put the belt on that would give us exposure immediately. Immediately. There was guys out there like Terry Funk and other guys that deserved to have it, but I wanted to do something different. And I was on the board of directors, and I recommended that we put the belt on Dan Severn because he was going to be good in Ultimate Fights. He had just finished. He just lost to Gracie in the one Ultimate Fight, and I figured, well, here's a guy that's going to be on 3 or 4 more of these things, and these things are the hottest thing on TV right now. So we put the belt on him, and then after we put the belt on him, and he won a couple of UFCs. I think he beat the car off, and then after that, I don't know who else, he beat somebody else, but he went out to the ring with the NWA belt, and we went out to the ring with him. And after that, we had members like coming out the ass. We were back up to more members than the original. I think they had like maybe 22, 23 members. We had more than that. And so what I planned out to do, and then with the help of Howard Brody, you got to give him the devil his due. He Howard's a good paperwork man. He don't know dick about the wrestling business, but he's good with paperwork and letters and being in a position of authority. Being the head jerk off in charge. But
one of the questions. The night Shane Douglas threw down the NWA title, how did you or the NWA benefit from this supposed shoot?
Well, we knew it was going to happen, right? And I told Bob Trowbridge, I said, listen, I don't think I should go over there. He says, look, you're on the board of directors, you're a member, they're a member. Until it happens, he says, you can't do nothing because it might not happen, but we think you're going to double cross us. And he said, well, make us out to look like baby faces. And that's basically what it did. And, we became baby faces over it, and that vaulted them into a new plateau also. But that was basically the whole thing behind it, to go over there and look like a baby face. And that got us more members out of it, too. Even though we lost them, we got other members that came in because there was members that didn't want to join because of ECW being in it, So we ended up getting some local members.
Why did it take you like 15 cuts to get the promo right?
It didn't do that. It was maybe 2 or 3. And it was because there was distraction. And the promo, I just done the promo to go through the night. I'd done what I was ordered to do. Mm-hmm. I'd done what I was ordered to do, and it was done maybe 2 or 3 times. And every time we tried to do it, it wasn't for me being stupid. It was like distractions or something happened, That's basically, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 takes.
So the NWA or yourself didn't benefit anything from them leaving the group?
Other than the fact that we got
press out of it.
We got members out of it, and we had our belt exposed. Like the NWA was back on TV, and
what were your thoughts on Paul Heyman doing this?
Well,
like turning his back on the NWA.
I suspected it was going to happen. From that point on, it got to the point where when he first became a member, we had meetings and discussions and done stuff. I knew he was going to stick it up our ass. You know what I'm saying? Like Paul Heyman's Paul Heyman. You're dealing with Satan on there, so expect the worst and hope for the best. You know what I mean?
I guess shortly after this, you tried to get some other promoters in with you to basically box Gordon and Heyman into Philadelphia, and I guess.
See, that wasn't basically it. I was a lot younger then. I just enjoyed fucking with people all the time. That's my trademark. And the problem with Todd was, even prior to him leaving the NWA, and we were good friends, if you ran a show in Pennsylvania, he took offense to it. It was like he owned the state, and there's no territories. He can come to Jersey and do something, but I wouldn't say nothing about it. It didn't bother me. But if I went to Pennsylvania, and the thing that really pissed them off, the thing that really got everything high heat with us to the point where Heyman and me hated each other, was I'd done a show with a guy named Mark Bodie. I don't know if you remember him or not. Mark was the greatest guy. He was a promoter. He got killed on the Turnpike. And Mark Bodie and me were real good friends, and I loved Mark Bodie. He was a lot of fun to be around, and we'd done some stuff together. So I sat down and said, why don't we do this? Why don't we do Sabu? Because Sabu would work for me any time. He didn't give a shit about ECW at the time. And I said, why don't we put Sabu and Terry Funk together? That would be a hell of a match. And we'd done that months before they even thought about it. Well, then he was bringing Terry Funk in, Gordon, and him were bringing Terry Funk in. And so when we had that match, that was the straw that broke the camel's back because they were pissed at that. But Funk came in, Sabu came in, and I don't know if any of you guys went to that match, but it was a packed. You were there. That was a packed house, and it was a good show. And unfortunately, I couldn't make the show, even though I helped put it together, or I couldn't make that one because I think I had one that day myself. But that was the thing that really pissed them off, and so I've done anything I can to screw with him because
So you guys tried to box him in and just
not box him in. It's basically just to fuck with him,
Okay.
like mind games and let him think shit, because he used to get a hair up his ass over that stuff,
I guess right after this, there was an incident at the ECW arena where you and someone else were blamed for letting air out of people's tires.
Jabba the Hutt, more. It was me and him. Well, we were accused of slashing tires and letting air out of tires, but that really didn't happen. I know of an incident that happened to a specific person that was done by someone else, but it was just one specific person. It wasn't a whole, but it got turned into a big, thing that never did happen. It was just someone happened to see somebody's truck over there that they didn't like, and they fucked with his truck. They just took the stems out of his tires. But it wasn't me, and whoever done it to him, I ain't going to say who it was, but that's what happened. Then it turned into the St. Valentine's Day Massacre,
From there, then you're promoting NWA
Right.
by yourself. Did you get re-hooked up with Lawler and do a stint down in USWA?
Yeah, Jerry Lawler and me. Jerry was one of the first people I met in the wrestling business. And me and him had a few problems over the years, and mainly me and Jerry's problems were as a result of me being friends with the Gilberts, like the Hatfields and the McCoys down there. The Lawlers and the Gilberts, for the next 100 years, will always have a thing there. But Jerry's problem was he had a love-hate relationship with the Gilberts, and it was funny because, not to jump too far ahead, when I done the first Eddie Gilbert Memorial, Lawler showed up and made a big tribute to him. But see, now that Eddie was gone, and Jerry needed another Gilbert to fuck with, so he started messing with Doug. And Doug's not only like a brother to me, he's like a son. I mean, him and my son's best friends, I'm best friends with him, I'm tight with his family. And I didn't want to get in the middle of it, and Jerry got all pissed off because he thought I'd done a lot for him. I mean, he done a lot for me, but I done a lot for him too. And I had a stint down there, which was probably one of the most watched things. It ran for almost 6 months, and he had me do some booking for him with Kamala and Pritchard, and I was like, damn, we had a good run down there because I had Fred the Elephant Boy and his brother come in, saying they were Lawler's illegitimate kids.
It was the Carluzzo collection agents.
Yeah, and then because we were trying to collect child support from Jerry Lawler being an illegitimate father. But it was the funniest thing ever down there. When we were down in Tennessee, I would take the boys, Fred the Elephant Boy and his brother, into a restaurant, and people would recognize them. They actually felt that Jerry Lawler ripped them off and would give them free food. I took them to a record store one time. They come out with piles of records and CDs and free shit because the people felt sorry for them. So we were going over to Memphis down there. We went down a couple of days ahead of time just to relax, and people were like giving them the keys to the city. Then it culminated with a main eventing against Jerry Lawler at the Mid-South Coliseum. It was a mixed match. Mike Dorgendorf, who was trained by the Savages, came in as my collector. And it was me and him against Jerry Lawler in a mixed match, and then he hit Dorgendorf with a fireball, and Dorgendorf had to go back to the locker room. So I was in the main. It was just me and Laura left. It was great. It was it was just one of the greatest times I ever had. And I liked Jerry. Had fun down there with Jerry. He was like one of the best. I like Jerry Lawler a real lot. I really do, and we're good friends. And I've had a lot of good times down in Tennessee with him.
So what?
He's another guy. He's another guy that you put in the category with Larry Sharp as. If you look at the business now, there's like maybe only a handful of guys out there that have a clue as to what's going on in the wrestling business. And obviously it's Vince McMahon. The other one's Larry Sharp. Eddie Gilbert was another one that was brilliant. Jerry Lawler. And another guy who knows more about the business than anybody, he's not even in the business, is Dave Meltzer. Dave Meltzer has more insight and knows more of what's going on with wrestling than anybody. And of course, Paul Heyman. I mean, there's like a half a dozen of them that should write a book someday on promoting professional wrestling. And Cornette too, you know, Jimmy Cornette's just the same. But there's like 6 or 7 of them that they should write a book on professional wrestling, a manual, and let promoters, if promoters read it, they would be successful. Because these guys all know the business better than anybody I've ever. And a lot of them are my mentors. I mean, I learned off of Lawler, Sharp, Gilbert. I talked to Meltzer. He's got a great insight. And Cornette's, we're best friends, me and Jimmy. So I learned a lot from him too. These are guys that'll give you answers that you don't want to hear, but they're the right answers. So that's the thing, you know.
So what was your fondest memory of working the USWA stint for like 6 months?
I like Tennessee better than any state I've ever been to. It's just a lot of fun. It's laid back, and it seems like when you drive, if you travel 2 hours, like if I go from here to a show up in North Jersey, like say I go to a Ricky O show or something, or Tommy Farrow show, it's like an hour and a half drive. You know, it seems like it's 6 hours. But down there, you drive from Memphis to Nashville, it's like over 2 hours. It only seems like 10 minutes. You know what I mean? I guess it's with the people you're traveling with, or the scenery, or whatever. And just it was a great place to eat and drink and have fun. And people down there are really good. I like the people down there. I like Lawler and I like the Gilberts and everybody down there. I really didn't have any problems with anybody down there. They're all a bunch of good guys down there. You know, good old Southern boys, and you know, they're mannerly and they respect people differently than people up here do. You know.
I just wanted questions to backtrack a little bit. Gordon started out, it was him and Joel Goodhart.
Right.
And you're promoting around the same time. What were the differences in how you two promoted shows?
Well, Goodhart you're talking about?
Yeah.
See, Todd Gordon was just a backer for Goodhart. That's all he was. And I hate to say this, but Todd Gordon was like, I'll get into that in a minute, but Todd Gordon, I'll elaborate on him for a minute. He's like the rich kid in the neighborhood that if you played with certain other kids, you weren't allowed to play with his toys, you know what I'm saying? And throughout wrestling, he'll never be known as nothing but a big money mark. I mean, he wasn't creative, he didn't have a mind for the business. So that's his forte in the wrestling business. That he's nothing but, he uses kids' inheritance to help Paul Heyman. You know, but like that's all, the only thing I can remember about Todd Gordon, he wasn't creative, I didn't think he knew shit about the business. And everybody that looks at him, that's his you know, people look at me and say he's a sneak and a backstabber and a fucking, and then they'll say shit like that about me, which is all true, I don't care. But like him, his moniker is going to be, he was just a money mark, you know. But Goodhart, see the problem with Joel Goodhart, these guys, like the thing with Joel Goodhart, which self-destructed him, was his ego. He had the biggest fucking ego of anybody I ever met. I mean, you know, it was incredible. Like, he was doing his thing in Philly, and I helped him with his stuff in Philly. And I was doing my stuff in Jersey, and he just got bent out of shape that anybody was running in the area, even though I was running in the area 3 years before him. You know, and basically, one thing about Goodhart, and I ain't pat myself on the back, but I was the first true original independent promoter ever in professional wrestling. Because I was the guy that brought the Terry Funks in, the Eddie Gilberts, the Stan Hansons, the Kamalas. I brought all them guys into this area. You know, I always had this idea that, you know, even though we can't get WWF guys, or maybe even some WCW guys, there's still a lot of guys out there that go through these promotions that people see and like. And they were the guys I originally brought in. I brought them in, you know, like, I had the Stan Hansen, Terry Funk, me and Larry Sharp had that Rumble on the River. That was one of the best matches ever in wrestling, and it actually brought together independent stars. I mean, from other areas of the country. I mean, like, you know, and I was actually the first, I feel I was the first guy ever to do that. I was the innovator of that shit. And Joel capitalized on it. He seen something good, and then he started bringing a couple Japanese guys and Owen Hart. And I used to help him to give him ideas on what to do. I mean, Jerry Lawler, I got him involved in that deal. I brought Lawler in. And I was the first one to bring these guys in, you know, and that's basically, you know, his ego, he could have been very successful. He wanted to promote the most violent form of wrestling ever. Another thing people don't realize, I was the first to have the Cactus Jack Eddie Gilbert match. I had that first before anybody. So, I mean, you know, but he wanted to promote the most violent form of wrestling ever. And at the time, he did. He had that, you know, barbed wire and cages and stuff that you only seen in Puerto Rico. he brought that up here. But his problem was, he would have a $40,000 house, but spend $45,000 on it. Because, I mean, he'd bring guys in, like, who didn't mean shit, like, nothing personal. At the time, they meant stuff. Like, he would bring guys like Adrian the Street and Jimmy Valiant, and the guys that, you know, that you've seen in the wrestling magazine that you didn't really give a shit about. But he wound up paying them like $500 each to bring them in, plus a trans and a hotel and their managers. And he was shooting tons of money on guys that were great talents in their area and drew money at one time, but couldn't draw shit up here, you know? And that's basically what happened with him. His ego really. I like Joel a lot. I mean, you know, I've talked to him a while back. He was in the insurance industry. I don't know if he still is, but we had our differences, and you know. But I like Joel. He's, you know, I like to see him get back in, but like, I mean, you know, put a leash on it a little bit, you know.
Get back up to speed. You do the USWA. About this time, Ian Rotten's working for ECW. He has fallen out. Then you guys.
That was much later than that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was much later than that. Ian Rotten. I knew Ian Rotten years ago when he used to wrestle. He used to do a Confederate gimmick with Bubba Monroe, Sputnik's son, and Bubba Monroe was the best. And he had a gimmick, and he kind of like carried Ian with it. And then Ian hooked up with Axel, and they became I don't know what the hell they were called.
Bad Breed.
Bad Breed, yeah. And then after that, they went to ECW. They went down to Memphis for a while, I think, and they went different places. And then he wound up with ECW, and then he had a falling out. And he wanted me to help him. You know, he wanted to come and help me and fuck with Gordon and Heyman, which I was getting kind of fed up with that by that time. And I brought him in for a couple vampire matches because that was the hot thing right then.
Mm-hmm. I guess probably the best match you had him in was him and Pondo in the Four Corners of Pain at the
yeah.
stuff.
The thing was that was a situation where we had maybe 150 people there, if that. We lost money on the show because I had Brian Christopher, Doug Gilbert, Dan Seven, Jim Cornette. We had sponsors, so we barely broke even on the show. You know, there's only like 100 people there, but we had $1,000 tape, and it was the most brutal. I don't care. Combat Zone with Zandick and all that shit. Ever as violent as the Four Corners of Pain match that I remember one time going over to Combat Zone. I tried helping Zandick out, you know, when he first started out, and I was a true friend to him, and he just turned into, he's another one that's got an ego. You know, I like to know who he buys his mirrors from. But I walked into this building and they had stuff set for a Four Corners of Pain match. And I looked at the one thing that they had the thumbtacks in the box. There was about 10 thumbtacks in it. There was like about a 2-inch strip of barbed wire in the other one broken beer bottle, and 2 mouse traps. And I said, this guy, he does this shit chintzy. I had 200, 300 mouse traps, 10,000 thumbtacks. I had like 14 cases of broken beer bottles, and I had enough barbed wire for a wrench. You know? And plus I had a barbed wire baseball bat in the middle of the ring. And and I told him before that match, I said, I'll tell you right now, I said, I'm not paying you for your medical bills like I did the last time when I had him in Yardville. You know, and the workman's comp paid for it. But, between him and Reckner, that was even just as bloody. And it was just a straight up barbed wire baseball match, bat match. And that was in Yardville.
I guess there's another incident at Yardville.
Yeah.
Probably stemmed right after this. That you and the building owner had a falling out.
What had happened? Yeah, what had happened was we were doing an IWA invasion up here, and I was bringing all those guys up, and I had the building set for a convention, a meet and greet with the IWA guys, and the show that night. Well, he told me I could have the building during the day that someone would be there, and all of a sudden at the last minute he got a bug up his ass, and I gave him a bunch of shit about it. And he said he wasn't going to have the convention because he had to do something else. I said, but you promised me. I basically, I'm paying you. We had a deal, and he just reneged on the deal. And I knew that night that was going to be the last time I was ever in that building. Ah, jeez. Let me shut that off on. Can you start all right with that?
Yeah.
What happened was I knew I was fucked in that building after that point because I gave him a bunch of shit, and there was people that were trying to get in there behind my back that didn't want to do anything hardcore. So I figured, well, I'm going to fuck this building up before I leave. So I had a barbed wire baseball match with him and Abuda Singh, who was Balls Mahoney at the time. And during the match, I mean, Angel come out to the ring with, I think he came out to the ring with Abuda Singh, who was, Balls Mahoney at the time, and she wasn't even out there 10 seconds. And Axel Rotten whacked her in the head with the bat. Legitimately whacked her to the point that it cost me thousands of dollars for plastic surgery because she had like all these holes in her head. And then Breckner got her nose shattered. I had to pay for that. Well, my workman's comp company did. And Ian Rotten had about 1 million stitches in him. So I told him the next time I have him back, I'm not paying their medical bills. And that was just crazy. So after that, we were fucked out of that building. We killed that town and left.
What are some of your fondest memories doing the IWA, NWA?
Well, the thing that really I can never figure, and this is another guy with an ego problem. Ian Rotten, okay, he's another guy with an ego. I mean, he's a great guy. Like if I sat down and went to lunch with him, and we talked baseball or football or not wrestling, we'd be best of friends. But he had a real ego problem because the first week he went down there with the NWA invasion, he was lucky if he was getting 150 people at the Derby Sports Arena, maybe 200. And he had a good thing going because it was like a close, independent type operation. Like he would get in the ring before the matches with the microphone and talk to the fans over the microphone. They were really into him. Well, the first week I went down there, didn't know we were coming. I went there with Tom Brandy, who was probably the greatest heel in that area ever. I went down there with the Misfits, and I think Reckless Youth went with us. Twiggy. Billy really went down there with us one time. I had to get in that story later when I had his ass eat some humble pie down there. But anyway, after that week, we went down every week. We packed that place. You couldn't get a ticket to that place. We had a steel cage match where the fans hated me so much and the NWA that they actually tore the side of the cage down to get to us to fucking hang us. And he was doing killer business down there, and then all of a sudden he realized that he's not the most over guy down there now. His ego wouldn't allow him to. So all of a sudden he tells me, I said, listen, I got a new angle I want to run down there. Let me bring down Ratchet. I said, because Ratchet was doing the gay gimmick, and down south they're the biggest homophobes, and I said that would really get heat. I said, let's bring Reckless down there, and so he says, all right. I said, look, he says, do me a favor. He says, can you get their plane tickets, and I'll give you the money when you get here. So I figured, what the hell, everything's going good. He was doing big business, he wouldn't dick me. Well, the day after I get the plane tickets, I get 6 of them, he calls me up and tells me it's done. We're not doing it anymore. I said, what's the problem? He couldn't come up with an excuse. And then we're packing this place. So I'm sitting there with 6 plane tickets and nowhere to go. And he never gave me the money for them. He burnt me on them. And after that, you see what's happened to him. He's lucky now if he gets 35 people in the place. No one wants to see him anymore. You know what I'm saying? And it was an ego thing with him because he wasn't the most over guy in the promotion now. Now my guys were Johnny, Tom Brandy and Reckless Youth and the Misfits and guys I was bringing down there. They were taking more to them than his bleach blonde fat fucking ass. You know what I'm saying? And he got pissed off over it, and he just figured, hey, look, these guys are stealing my heat. Rather than make thousands and thousands of dollars, he'd rather get nobody there or lose money as long as he's the over guy in the promotion.
I guess one thing you did down there, right after Princess Diana died.
Oh yeah, it's a shame.
Why don't you explain what you did there?
Well, that was they had to escort me out of the building. I'll tell you the whole story. I'm kind of embarrassed by it. But what happened was he got on the microphone. He had a good PA system. Like he had wireless mics, and it was a perfect place to do good wrestling if he kept the feud going. Because I had other ideas where I was going to have him come over to the NWA eventually and really get the people to hate him. And like Tom Brandy, he was the most hated guy down there, and he was the one that sold tickets. And he's out there. He says, I want us all to bow our heads now for a minute and pay tribute to Lady Di or Princess Di, whoever the hell she was. And they put the lights out, and I had a wireless mic in the back, and I yelled out, fuck that whore. And I walked out, and I said, that bitch would still be alive today if she wasn't sucking some Arab's dick in the back of a Mercedes, and they just fucking went nuts. I mean, they actually, he did not have enough police and security guards to keep the crowd off of me. They had me circled. I was in actual fear of my life because he had fan participation in his matches. These fucking guys there with weapons, light bulbs with spikes on them, and mallets with razor blades, and guns and knives, and you know. And I'm surrounded by these people. I mean, you got 12-year-old kids with a goddamn sword, and you know, grandmothers with barbed wire, baseball bats, and like they're trying to kill me. I'm trying to think, what the hell? So we had a big riot broke out. It was just nuts. The police had to escort me out of the building, and like I'd be sitting in a diner 20 miles out of town, and people come up to me in the diner and recognize me and start fucking with me while I was eating. It was just, it got out of control. I mean, you know, I couldn't even, like when I went to Louisville, I'd go off the plane, and I'd go right to the hotel, and I had to stay in my room. So they brought me to the building and brought me back. I couldn't even, you know, I mean, they wanted to kill me down there. But that was, yeah, the Princess Di thing. That was, it was kind of tasteless, but it packed his house, you know, next week, so.
You gotta tell me a Billy Real story from down in Louisville.
Well, Billy Real has always been like a son to me, and what had happened was he was always like a son to me, but he got a little out of control, and I stopped using him, and he was getting really out of control. I mean, I actually had at one time Jim Cornette sit down with him and tell him everything he was doing wrong to help his career, and he eventually listened to it, but he was getting out of control, and they decided to bring him down to Louisville, and prior to that, I had sent the Misfits. They were like my locker room
enforcement
agency. So I sent them to Billy Real's house to smack him around a little bit and teach him, have a talk with him. And his uncle come to the door with a gun, and they had a gun, and it just turned out to be a freaking mess. So I knew he was going to be down in Louisville without any guns, so I had Harley and Domino stomp the shit out of him. I think they broke his nose too, but after that, I mean, Billy Real is probably the top young up-and-coming star in the wrestling business, without a doubt. And he gets a little more size on him. In the next couple of years, a little more experience. He can work already. It's not a problem. He's going to be one of the top guys in the sport. He's going to get a little bit bigger and bide his time. He's one of these guys that started out wrestling when they were 15, and because he's only 20 now, he feels he's getting fucked because he hasn't had a break yet. He's not to get a break yet. You know what I'm saying? He's still too young for that. He's got to realize that he started out when he was 15. He didn't start out when. If he started out when he was 21, he's complaining when he's 26. That's one thing. But to start out when you're 15 and complain when you're 19 or 20, then that's not, you know. But he's a great kid. I love him like a son. He's like one of the top. I got a lot of top guys I produce. I still got like Inferno Kid. He should be going to WWF. Got the Haas brothers. You know, me and Jim Kent are grooming them right now for the WWF. You know. Jimmy didn't want to use them, and I kept force feeding him on them, so he brought them down there, and now I brought him down there with the idea so Kevin Kelly can sing. And he's seen me, fell in love with him, they want him up there. At the same time, I'm going to try to do a Billy Real and these other guys.
The IWA thing, that ends.
Right.
Somewhere in there, like you said, Candido jumps.
Right.
You make Severn the world champ.
Right.
Now, he wasn't really trained in wrestling. I guess Al Snow brought him into the business. What was it like working with Severn, you know, so he understands the inside of the business?
The problem is that Dan Severn is the best wrestler in the world. Unfortunately, it's not professional wrestling. Where I think the WWF went wrong with Dan was they should have brought him in as a killer, like Goldberg, like WCW did, because Dan was a legitimate badass. But I think the thinking was, well, we don't want a legitimate badass beating our wrestlers because our wrestlers are supposed to be the baddest people in the world. And Dan was just never used right. And when Al Snow trained him basically, see, Al Snow's a martial artist too. I don't know if people know that or not. But Al Snow's, he's into martial arts. And he taught Dan basically how to try to punch and how to defend himself against strikers, basically. And that was the thing. I think Dan, when you've been wrestling as long as he has, he was like an Olympian almost, and you know, when he was like he holds a record for pins in the state of Michigan. And when you wrestle for your entire life at collegiate style, it's tough to get. One guy who's doing a real good job with it is unbelievable. A surprise is Kurt Angle. Yeah, But Dan, it was never used right, and it never was really trained properly for professional wrestling. And I like Dan a lot. Dan, I mean, I love Dan Severn. I had some great times with him too. You know, he's a good guy.
Another good story that I heard through the grapevine was one night Severn was in, and you were ribbing Billy Real that he was going to go over. He was going to beat Severn for the NWA title.
That's great, yeah.
Why don't you explain that story a little bit?
Basically, what happened was, if I get it right, you can correct me, but basically, I told Billy that he was going to take the belt from Severn. And I think Dory Funk was there, and we had told Billy he was taking the belt for Severn because Severn had to leave to go to the Fed, whatever the reason was, or something like that. And he's sitting there, and he's like with the dry heaves and throwing up, and then when Dan Severn had a match, he knew Severn wrestled the first time. I told him Severn was wrestling twice, and I told Severn back to the ring as he come back to me. I said, "Go tell Billy Real that you don't fucking." You know, he's dropping the belt tonight, but it ain't going to be fucking easy, and he's going to take out his frustration on him, something like that, I think. And Billy's sitting there throwing up the whole fucking night, and Dan Severn's coming up there yelling in his face, "I know I got to drop the belt to you, you little fuck, but I'm not going to, you know." Anyway, and Dory Funk comes up to him, he's patting Billy Real on the shoulder, saying, "Don't worry, it won't be that bad, he ain't going to hurt you that bad," and shit like that. And he's all, like, vomiting and shit, and nervous as a whore in church, and then he found out it was a rib, and, like, you know, something along that lines, you know.
Let's talk about a few of your good ribs that you pulled. Just one night you had the headbangers in, and Eric Sims was giving you some shit.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you tell that story?
Well, here was the problem. I was always friends with Eric Sims. He's the most hated guy in the wrestling business, bar none.
You don't think you're first?
No, I'm probably down to 2 by now, maybe 3. I've gotten some, you know, some babyface sympathy lately. Well, not Billy, I'm talking about Billy Real. All right, Eric Sims got into had a problem with Jabba the Hutt. Do you know more? And what happened, Eric Sims, who I was always friends with and never bothered, he brought my family in. He got involved personally with it and brought me into his problems with Gino Moore. So I called him up and told him I see him, I was going to beat his ass, you know, blah, 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 threatened him and told me, how could he do that to me when I never done nothing to him or his family, and, you know, blah, 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 you know. So, at the time, Dapper Johnny Falco, Joe Panzerino, who was my partner in these shows, somehow was convinced by Eric Sims to let him set up a table. So, what had happened was, Sims had the table set up, I think it was at Ocean High School up in Ocean County. And these 2 little girls come to the locker room door looking for the headbangers, and I got these pictures of the headbangers, and they asked them if they can autograph them. And they said, "They're nice pictures, where'd you get them from?" And I said, "Look," I said, "they got them off of Eric Sims back there, he's selling all your shit back there." Or they freaking flipped out. They went there and they tried smacking them around, and then he offered them like 2 cents on each picture, you know. Well, during the match, it was them 2 against, I don't know if Droz was involved, or...
Yeah, I think Droz was there.
And somebody else, well... They spilled out of the ring and went over and they just like body slammed each other on his tables. And after they'd done that, about 100 kids swarmed like little goddamn rats, stealing all his shit. So he lost like thousands of dollars in merchandise, and he was all pissed at that. But I felt some self-satisfaction to get them back that way.
Another good rib you had right after Ahmed Johnson was released by WWF.
Oh, yeah?
You had this great idea that he was going to draw all this money and bring him in.
That was one of my greatest. Well, what had happened was I brought Ahmed Johnson in. He was coming in for a card show, an autograph show, and I booked him for 2 shows. So I had my guy go up there to pick him up at a hotel in North Jersey and bring him down. Well, he pulls up to the hotel, and he gets Ahmed Johnson. They come walking out for the show. And my friend has a Nissan Altima. I think it was a Nissan Altima, which is a big enough. Andre the Giant can fit in a Nissan Altima. He said, "I ain't getting in that car. That car's too small." My friend says, "Jesus Christ, Andre the Giant's been in this car. You know what the hell? You can fit in it." And he got pissed. He goes, "You get me a limo." And my friend says, "Yeah, right." So he calls me up. He says, "His asshole wants a limo." I said, "Fuck him." I said, "Tell him to get in the car, all right, and head down to the match. I said, don't worry about the limo. I'll get somebody with a bigger car to take him home, you know? Well, he refused to come, so I get there, and the guy comes and goes, bad news because he wouldn't come because he won't get my car. I said, what? So I figured, I'm going to fix this guy's ass real good because he was like one of my headliners that night, and he no-showed me. So I got on the microphone. I said, listen, I said, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I said, you know, we're doing a benefit tonight here for the CYO, you know, Catholic Youth Organization. And Ahmed Johnson was supposed to be here. But he basically said, fuck the CYO. And he don't give a shit about you fans. And they started, like, you know, feel the feeding frenzy coming on. So here's what I want you all to do. Just get a piece of paper and a pencil right now. If you don't have one, grab one off the person next to you. I says, and write this number down. And I had 2 ring car girls parading through the building with his number on it. I said, now tonight when you go up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or get something to drink or come out of a bar, call him and tell him how disappointed you are and him not coming here. Well, I went outside to use the phone booth outside, and there was a line with about 60 kids in there. I go to the front of the line. I said, what's this shit about? This kid's going, yeah, you no good motherfucker. Dennis is a good guy. How can you do that to him and his group down here, you cocksucker? And they're cursing. These little kids, I was fucking laughing. So he hung up. So the next day, I had another show where he was supposed to be on. So my guy wanted to pick him up. And I'll tell you, he's the stupidest son of a bitch in the world. I mean, he's like, he's dumber than that goddamn glass of water there. My friend goes to pick him up at the hotel for the next night. He said, man, I can't make it. I didn't come to your show. He goes, I got to get some sleep. He goes, I was up all night answering crank calls. He goes, somebody gave my fucking number out. So all he had to do was tell the hotel front desk, hey, hold on my calls. But like, he's the stupidest son of a bitch on the planet. And then he called me up and he threatened me on the phone. And I said, listen, you dumb fuck. I said, you couldn't find your way out of Houston with a compass. I said, so, I mean, I'll never run into you ever again, and you'll never run into me. And I said, it ain't like it's Don Corleone threatened me, you fucking idiot. Well, after that, every time he comes up here, he worked a couple shows up here for Barry Geiger, I think, or something. And he always asks where Dennis Carluzzo's at. He's still got this, you know, this hard on for me.
What are some other good ones that maybe I didn't dig up?
Man, I pulled a million of them. This is the greatest one. This is one of the greatest ribs ever. I went over, Jim Cornette called me one night. And every time Jimmy comes into town, we go to a restaurant called The Ribbit. They got the best ribs in the world. The best ribs in the world. And we go there and we just eat like pigs. Like one time me and him went there, and our food bill come to $141, just me and him. That's how much we eat when we go to this place. Well, he says, listen, he says, we've got the pay-per-view in Philly tomorrow night, he says, and our TV, he says, come over to the Holiday Inn that night. He says, we'll go to the Ribbit. He says, what time do they open till? I said, till 12. He says, well, my meeting should be over by 9:30. He says, and we'll go to Ribbit. He said, can you make it there in time? Everybody knows, nobody drives with me in wrestling because I'm the craziest driver. I was going to make it there in 10 minutes. So I pull up to the Holiday Inn, they have a boardroom lit up in there, and sitting at the table is Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon, Jim Ross, Cornette, everybody you can think of, Lawler, Patterson, Briscoe, the whole creative team, everybody. And me and Mark sitting at the car, and we're just sitting there and bullshitting, my son, and we look and we see them all in the room there. So we go inside and we're sitting down in the lobby, me and Mark, and we see a local wrestling fan. I'll tell you his name is. He probably knows I did it because Dave Baumkratz. You know Dave Baumkratz? He's a little kid. He's like 40 years old and he wears a baseball hat. He looks like he's 15. Well, he's sitting there, and me and Mark are sitting there, and he's talking to us, and he's saying how him and Shane McMahon are good friends. So Mark comes up to the spring and says, Dad, come with me. He says, I got a great idea. He says, let's go and page Dave Baumkratz and tell him that Shane McMahon hadn't delivered sodas to the meeting. So I go to the phone booth and I call the front desk. I said, excuse me. I says, can you page Dave Baumkratz for me? I said, he's a little guy with a baseball hat on. He goes, yeah, he's sitting right there. He comes to the phone, and I put Mark on. He goes, hey, Dave, buddy, it's Shane, your friend Shane McMahon. He goes, oh, hi, Shane, what are you doing? And he goes, nothing, buddy. He goes, I don't know if you do me a favor. He goes, I can't get out of this meeting. Can you bring me a couple diet sodas in? So he goes zipping down. I mean, it was like the Flash. He goes to the bar, and in the meantime, when he's in the bar getting a tray of diet sodas, me and Mark outside, we sit on the hood of the car because we're watching the boardroom. All of a sudden, you hear somebody like a knock on the door, and you open the door. It's Dave Baumkratz with a tray of sodas, and he goes, "Here, Shane, here's the sodas you ordered." And I look at it. The cornet's sitting in the back of the room. He says, "Fucking Dennis and Mark. I know they had something to do with this." You know? They took the soda. It was pretty funny. It was just a bunch of them. I can't even remember half of them. You know, that's the usual, like, you know, the shit pizzas and stuff like that, you know.
Here's an incident. I guess Amy Lee wanted to kick your ass one night.
Hey, I'm 1-1 against her.
Tell us both stories.
Well, what had happened was, the first fight was, I had a show in Pennsylvania. I was booking the town for it, and I told the talent, don't mention anything about the show till I start doing the advertising because it's in Philadelphia and Gordon had a hair up his ass. So I had this big show set up in Pottstown. I had Rick Bartel and blah, 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 blah. At the time I said, listen, I said, if you want to manage, I'll put you on. I said, manage Martel that night. I said, we got a gimmick we want to do. I said, we just got to keep it quiet because I'm not going to reach the advertising for about another couple of days. Well, her big mouth gets on the phone and calls Todd Gordon and stooges me out. Now, he's calling the building, trying to cancel everything. He's going, so I gave her a bunch of shit about it. I said, listen, I said, you're off the show. You're fired. I said, I'll never use you again. So I'm at the Marriott, and I'm sitting in the bar with Dick Murdoch and Terry Funk. And Amy at the time was a big fan of Dick Murdoch, and she liked Dick Murdoch a lot. So we're sitting there, and me, Dick Murdoch, and Terry Funk were in the bar. So what happened was, Terry Funk says, come on with me, Carlos, I got to go to the bathroom. And I said, yeah, I do too, let's go. So we go, and we go in the bathroom, and we come back out. And where we were sitting, Amy Murray and her friends sat down with Dick Murdoch. And we went back over and like, you know, where's our seats? And they wouldn't get up. So I said, fuck them. Terry, let's go sit over here. So we went over there and sat in another spot. And Dick Murdoch was come over with us. So by this time, Amy Murray was half shot in the ass from drinking 25 Blue Hawaiians. She was drunk as hell. So the bar closes and we're leaving. And it's me, Dick Murdoch, and Terry Funk were walking out of the place, and she's walking behind us. And we had Gary LeJambre with us. I don't know who he is. He wrestles his big horse. He goes to Japan once in a while. He's a big motherfucker. Well, as we're leaving, she's going, I hear somebody going, Carlisa, you motherfucker. You stole my date. I turn around, I said, stole a date? What the fuck? I said, listen, I said, Murdoch wouldn't fuck you with horses, Dick. Leave him alone. They're just saying, because there was no sexual thing there between the two of them. She was just a fan of his. And I thought she was saying maybe I took him away from her because they were supposed to go out somewhere. She stole my date. I said, fuck you. I said, leave me the fuck alone. So I go outside. Funk goes upstairs with Murdoch, and I'm outside with Big Horse. I'm standing near my car. All of a sudden, boom, man, I start seeing stars. She come up behind me and sucker punch me. Now, she's the first female in the state of New Jersey to have a black belt in Goju Karate, so she's a badass. So I'm seeing stars, and this is the first time in my life I hold off and sucker punch. I just fucking nailed her. And then she starts trying to give me these windmill kicks. I'm catching her leg every time and dropping her on her ass. And of all things, there had to be two guys from newsletters out there while the fight's going on, and security's coming out, and the cops and all these people, and they're hooting and hollering. As I'm driving away, she's running past my car, punching on the window, trying to break it. But the next day, she called me up like nothing would ever happened, and I just told her she's off the show. But that was the one fight I won. The other one was at the Eddie Gilbert Memorial in Cherry Hill. I think it was number 3. And we're up in this hotel room, and we're talking, and she's sitting there talking to somebody, and she said something to me, and I yelled something sarcastic back to her. And I didn't hear what Harley Lewis said to her. He said something real bad to her, and she got all huffy and puffy and steamed up. And she come walking by me. I thought she was leaving because she was pissed. But as she's walking by me, she sucker punches me again. I mean, she hit me harder than I ever been hit by anybody. And like my eyes are rolling up in my head, and I'm trying to get my senses, and she hauls off and kicks me in the nuts. So I'm buckled over, and I'm blacking out, and like everybody's standing there like in shock, like Tommy Rich and Doug Gilbert, like in shock. So I said, fuck. So as I try to get up again, she steps back and gives me another karate kick to the nuts. And this time I'm sucking fucking wind. I mean, out of it. I'm trying not to be embarrassed by some girl kicking my ass. So like I'm seeing stars, my eyes are on it. So I grabbed her by the back of the hair and I gave her a headbutt. And I hit her so hard that I thought I missed and hit the wall. And she didn't even bat a fucking eye. And my eyes are going to roll in there. I am ready to go down for the 10 count. So I lean back against the wall to shake it off, and she kicks me in the nuts again. So I'm like, I have no breath of all left in me at all this time. I like really fucking. So I reached up and grabbed her by the back of the hair again, like choked her out. And everybody jumped in and broke it up. But she actually beat my ass that one time, so I'm 1-1 against her.
Are we gonna have a rubber match anytime soon?
No, please. She's doing real well. She's being trained by Les Morgan. She was always like a valet manager type, and you know, the way she would get heat was by telling everybody ringside to go fuck themselves. You know, fuck you little 8-year-old, and fuck your mother. But now she's actually being trained, and she's actually can grapple and wrestle real well as a lady wrestler. She's doing real well for He's trained her down there, and she's doing real good. And I'm glad for her. You know, she's getting a lot of work. You know, like through Rambo and Dick Karakoff, and she works for other independent promoters. But you know, she can actually wrestle now, which is good. You know.
Good. Let's turn the tide. Go back to Dan Severn.
Right.
Bring Dan in. He's a champion. I guess around this time, he's still doing the Ultimate Fighting, and then you have Pancrase champion Dan, Ken Shamrock, where he defeats him.
Right.
What kind of waves did that create through the
well,
NWA
it was very embarrassing for us because that was it was in Wyoming, and it was just Dan was basically didn't have the right people handling him, and I used to sit there and tell him certain things because I got to be real accomplished on shoot fighting because I watch a lot of the tapes and I watched the guys work out and I hung out with the fighters, and you know, I got to be good friends with Shamrock and his brother, and that's when I met the infamous Tank Abbott, and what a fucking mess. And I kept telling Dan, I said, they know you're going to, you know, wrestlers always bend their head down and go on their stomach. I said, he knows that. I said, you guys just stay away from him. I said, and, you know, just give him a couple punch at him and just, you know, you can take him down and choke him out. Well, we wasn't even in the fight 2 minutes, and Dan ducks his head down, and Shamrock choked him out. It just pissed me off because he didn't listen. You know, it was. I actually told him what was going to happen, and the guys that were training him and managing him didn't know what the hell they were doing. I thought, and I kind of got really. It was like one of the low points in the wrestling business for me because I like Dan Severn in real life, and to lose that way, it was just terrible. It was devastating, and but. He has a lot of heart, and he went right back to the drawing board, and then he eventually beat Shamrock, which got him back his, you know, his credibility. But the one guy he lost to, he should have never lost to, and I think it was more devastating to him than losing to Shamrock was when he lost to Coleman. And that there, it just